I am going to assume something about you. You're not uncommitted. You've worked hard, you've shown up, you've invested some time, a lot of money, some energy, and reputation. So, when someone suggests what's holding you back is belief, you're probably thinking, please don't tell me I just need to believe harder. That's not what I'm saying. What we're talking about is structure, because belief is not inspiration. Belief is infrastructure. I'm Andrea Libros, and welcome back to She Thinks Big. In order to get into what this episode is all about, I want to make sure that I clearly define what I mean when I say belief infrastructure or belief is infrastructure, so we're all on the same page. When I say belief is infrastructure, I mean that it's the internal system that really determines how much success your business can carry or hold without breaking, or without you stepping back in to hold it together. So here's a way to think about it. A building, you don't see the foundation of a building. It's below the ground, but the whole building relies on that foundation. Most of you probably are not standing there admiring the plumbing in your house. But when it fails, when there's a leaky faucet or a toilet won't flush, that plumbing becomes super important. So the foundation or the plumbing, those things become the most important things to you, to the building, to your day. And belief works the same way. So that's why I also think of belief as your internal operations system. Belief, it determines how decisions move, how you make decisions, determines where things bottleneck, what overloads you. It determines what feels kind of unsafe, even when it's working. And belief capacity, that's how much success your leadership nervous system can really tolerate calmly. So belief is not what you write down in your journal. Belief is really revealed in what you delegate versus what you hold on to, or what you tolerate versus what you actually address or say out loud or have the hard conversation about. Belief is really revealed in what are you delaying versus deciding. It shows up when you think about where you're stepping back in when things are working. So if you are telling me, if you're saying out loud to the world, you want to grow, but you're still the bottleneck, or you still have to approve everything, or you still equate leadership with how available you are to your clients or your team or your family, that's not a knowledge gap. You really don't need to learn anything else. You just really need to hone in on your belief. That really is a signal that your current belief infrastructure is still built for a smaller version of your business. You can't grow any bigger if you are operating on a small belief infrastructure. When I talk about this kind of concept with women, there is often confusion. So let's separate two things that I see that women sometimes lump together all the time, really. They lump together commitment and belief. Commitment and belief are not the same. Commitment usually sounds like this: I'll do whatever it takes. I won't quit. I'll figure it out. I'm just going to push through. Okay. And commitment matters. So don't get me wrong. Commitment matters. It builds businesses. It gets things off the ground. But commitment, that runs on effort. Whereas belief really runs on capacity. So if commitment were a person, it might ask, what am I willing to do? Whereas belief asks, what am I willing to hold without kind of destabilizing everything? Or What am I willing to continue to work towards without having everything else fall apart? So you can be deeply committed and still capped, because growth doesn't respond to effort the way building does. Growth responds to capacity. Here's a really important distinction. You can grow without scaling, but you cannot scale what hasn't grown first. Okay, so here's another way to think about this. Growth is internal, but scale is external. Growth is internal, scale is external, and belief is kind of the bridge between the two. If your belief hasn't grown first, if capacity hasn't expanded, any attempt to scale is going to feel kind of heavy. It's going to feel chaotic. Then here's the part I think most people avoid saying plainly when they talk about growth. You don't grow based on what you want. You grow based on what you believe you're allowed to keep. All right, I'm going to say that again. You don't grow based on what you want. You grow based on what you believe you're allowed to keep. If part of you believes that money creates problems or money is a problem, if you believe ease leads to complacency, if you believe support makes you dependent, if you believe the calm is kind of temporary, if you believe visibility is just going to invite criticism, you will unconsciously destabilize your growth. Not dramatically, but subtly. And belief always wins over intention. Belief always wins over intention. So I often hear people say, I want to be intentional about this. I want to move forward with intention. Okay, super, yay, but do you believe whatever you're trying to do is actually possible? Here's the core truth. You can't grow beyond what you don't believe you deserve. And anything you try to scale without that belief will eventually collapse back in on itself. So we've talked all about this belief infrastructure, growth versus scale. Now, let me make all of this tangible. I see this all the time. A woman finally hires the role she knows she needs. The role, this person that she hires, it's the right resume, right experience, right intention. And then, without realizing it, she keeps redoing this new hire's work. Not because the person isn't capable. Remember, they have an amazing resume. But because somewhere underneath, she doesn't yet believe the business can hold together without having her hands on everything. And this is not a hiring problem, my friends. That is a belief infrastructure that hasn't caught up to the growth or hasn't caught up to having this new hire. Here's another example. She has her biggest revenue month ever. Money lands. Numbers look amazing. And instead of letting that just settle and celebrate, she immediately looks for what might go wrong. She adds pressure. She accelerates timelines. She creates urgency where none really exists because calm money feels very unfamiliar. So that's not a financial literacy problem. That's belief capacity. Here's another example. And as I'm saying these, I want you to think about, like, is this me? Which one of these sounds like me? Another example is the calendar finally opens. Okay, you've got fewer meetings, you've got less chaos, you've created this space to think, and almost immediately, she fills it back up. You fill it back up. There's more calls, there's more projects, there's more being needed because space asks a harder question than busy ever did. The space, it's asking, who am I if I no longer am the one holding everything together? Now, why is that? Well, I think that most women were taught to earn success, not receive it. So they believe they deserve growth only if they're working harder than anyone else and everyone else. They're constantly available. They're exhausted but grateful. And that kind of belief system creates businesses that require struggle to function. And here's the quiet truth. If your business only works when you're exhausted, you don't actually believe you deserve it any other way. And that's not failure. That's conditioning. And it's optional. So let me offer a few kind of gut checks that I believe can sort of help you navigate all of this and be aware of your behaviors or how you react or respond. I want you to kind of eavesdrop in on your brain like you're an observer. I don't want you to judge. I just want you to notice. Where do I step back into execution right when things start working? What level of ease still feels irresponsible to me? Where do I confuse being needed with being valuable? What would break if I truly believed I was allowed to be supported? And do I believe growth has to feel heavy to be real? So your answers to those questions aren't the problem. They're just the data. Ultimately, growth doesn't ask, how hard can you work? It asks, how much expansion can you tolerate without collapsing back into control? Because control is often what we reach for when belief capacity hasn't expanded yet. Growth doesn't respond to pressure. It really only responds to permission. So you don't need more commitment. You've already proven that. You need belief infrastructure that allows you to grow into the level of leadership your business is already asking for. You can't grow what you don't believe you're allowed to have. And when belief is solid, everything else finally has somewhere stable to land. I know that sometimes busy feels safer than spacious, and doing feels safer than holding. But leadership, real CEOing, requires belief infrastructure strong enough to let things work without interference. If you're listening to this and thinking, this is me, these are the things I know I need to work on and I want to become better at so I can be the best leader and version of myself I can be, well, that's the work I do. I work with women who need belief infrastructure and internal operating systems strong enough to hold the next level of their businesses without burning it down or holding it together themselves. If that's where you are, you'll know. And if you don't, this episode will keep working on you anyways. You might hear me in your head as you're walking your dog or in the shower or driving across the country. The work or what I share with you on this podcast is not meant to be a one and done. What you take from it will hit you when you're meant to find it. It's kind of like in coaching. I can sometimes say things 100 times, but it is not until the 101st time that it hits home with someone. So be nice to yourself. Give yourself a little space. This will all eventually land. She Thinks Big is hosted by me, Andrea Libros. To everyone listening, it would be so great for you to hit the follow button. And also, will you leave a review for this show? It helps us reach more people just like you. And we also love hearing your feedback about our episodes. Would love to know why you keep listening. If you're navigating big decisions right now, you don't need to be doing it alone. You can learn more about working with me at AndreaLibros.com. For real-time insight and straight talk, come find me on Instagram at Andrea.Libros.coaching. See you next Tuesday with a whole new episode.